Today, beer is the third most popular drink after water and tea, and dates back even before the roots of modern civilization were laid. Homebrewing today can be an incredibly complex process requiring specialized tools and equipment, but beer's initial invention is believed to be just by accident. So in this video, I'm going to try and replicate the beer making process using some very limited tools and ingredients. Basically, just dirt and grass. With them, I'll be exploring 3 beers: an accidental brew, a rough replication of the oldest recorded beer recipe from Mesopotamia, and an attempt at a more modern form of beer. Let's brew these up and see how they taste. Everything we use comes from 8,000 generations of collective innovation and discovery. But could an average person figure it all out themselves and work their way from the Stone Age to today? That's the question we're exploring. Each week, I try to take that next step forward in human history. My name is Andy, and this is How to Make Everything. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next step in this journey. First up, my arsenal. For the grasses, I grew and processed a few varieties of grass grains last summer. Today, we'll be using the wheat and barley seeds. Then, to help hold and sift things, I have another grass, cattails, that Annalise helped weave into some baskets. Then, for the dirt. We have some high-quality clay we were able to dig up, and with a small bit of dry processing and sifting it using the baskets, could turn into some quality clay. Also in the earthen category is a currant stone we previously shaped and have previously used for grinding our grains for bread. Then there'll be a few small exceptions for the rest of the recipes, like some rosemary and dates. So first, in the terms of tools, what we're really going to need is a few containers, both to prep our grains and contain them, and to be able to heat them to the proper temperatures. And then lastly, some vessels for them to sit in and ferment. In our process of building ourselves through history, we are still just before the invention of the wheel. So unfortunately, I don't have that tool to assist, which would have made making larger and more symmetrical vessels a lot easier. Also, if I had any experience in pottery since first grade, that probably would have helped too. All right, so I got most of these guys fired now. Just got this big guy left to do in his own batch. At this point, we're still doing mostly pit firing, which has a limited temperature you can get up to, which means these are all kind of low fired clays that are actually still porous. You do get a slight glaze accidentally sometimes from wood ash. It's not really a high enough temperature to, I think, apply a consistent one. And glazes would come a little bit later in history. If you fill it with water, it'll hold it for a while. I'm gonna try and ferment beer in these long term. It's gonna slowly escape. So one solution they used to do is use pine pitch to line the inside of their vessels and that would waterproof it. Greeks are known for doing that for a lot of their wine vessels. But I'll do these 2 for now. After this guy's fired, I'll do him, so then we can start fermenting our beer. With some containers now, we can do the first step for any beer, malting the grains. So after soaking and drying these guys a few cycles, they've started to sprout and do the malting process, which is turning the carbohydrates in the seeds into a maltose sugar, which will then ferment into alcohol. And now that we've halted it, this should be sugar that we can extract out of it by putting it into a bath. So at this point, they all have little sprouts on them. I'm just gonna kind of agitate them and try and let all the roots fall through the gaps in these baskets, and then we can add them to the pot and start making the beer. Now, for the first brew, the accidental one. yeast can be found in the wild pretty much anywhere. So if left exposed, it can pretty easily start to propagate around any source of sugar. I previously did this to get a starter for my bread. It's believed that beer was likely accidentally invented when someone left out a gruel of malted cereal and came back to discover it had a unique taste and effect of alcohol. Since then, I've been cultivating my starter by continuing to feed it ground wheat malt. I was just leaving some stuff to rot and hoping to eat yeast. It's a little risky, so to test it out to make sure it works, I did 2 batches of beer using store-bought ingredients, kind of a standard brewing yeast for this one as a control, and then used some of my wild yeast and let it go and ferment, and the end results were pretty similar. Both tasted pretty good. The wild yeast was a little bit more sour, which is common with wild yeasts, and I actually preferred it. So I think we're in good shape. I think we have a good culture to make some beer. So I'm gonna add some of my yeast to some watered down gruel and accidentally make some beer. Next up, the ancient Sumerian recipe from Mesopotamia. Beer traces its origin to multiple places around the world, potentially as early as 11,000 BCE. But the first recorded recipe is a Sumerian song written down around 1800 BC as a hymn to the goddess of alcohol, Ninkasi. The recipe has been replicated and interpreted a variety of different ways in recent years, but the most unique aspect of it is its use of bread to make beer. Here's one interpretation of the recipe. First, by using dates and crushing them, and adding yeast to start what would be more of a date wine. Then, some of the malted barley is ground to make flour and mixed with water and yeast to form a bread called baber. Left to set, it is then baked in our earthen oven, which we also previously made using grass and dirt. Then the bread and additional ground wheat malt are added to some hot water and left to sit for an hour. Then brought to a boil to sanitize it, and after cooling added to already fermenting date wine and left to finish fermenting. Then for last, an attempt at a more modern recipe, but with my limited ceramic tools. First adding the malted barley to hot strike water and letting it soak for 1 hour. The hot water, roughly 155 degrees Fahrenheit, helps activate the last step of converting the starches into sugar. Then rinsing with even hotter water, roughly 200 degrees Fahrenheit, a step known as sparging, to help extract the very last of the sugar that's still in the grain. After setting for 10 minutes, strain out the solids, bring the liquid or wort to a boil, and add the flavoring. To date, this is most oftenly done with hops, but hops weren't used in brewing for another 5,000 years. However, prior to hops, a collection of herbs called a grut would be used. So to keep things simple, I'll use an herb that's sometimes found in this, and I've already grown and have handy: rosemary. After boiling, it is then removed from the heat and left to cool to room temperature. Then added to the fermenting bottle with some of the wild yeast. Now we wait a week or so for everything to ferment and hopefully not produce anything toxic. All right, so these guys ferment for a little over a week and should hopefully have turned into alcohol. Let's open them up, give them a taste, and see how they turned out. Hopefully not poison myself. It's got a nice color. All right, so we got the 3 final drinks here. Interesting, unique color to them all. This almost looks like a slushy. Disclaimer, don't do this at home. Don't let random things rot and then taste them. There is a potential for different molds and stuff to get into this and poison yourself. Don't do that. But I'm gonna take a chance. I think I've done enough precautionary measures to hopefully not kill myself. We got the accidental beer. Authentically, this maybe should be more like an actual paste gruel. You can already tell there's a lot of floaties in it from the malted grain, but there's also likely some pieces of the pine resin that used to seal the bottle, and that should add a unique flavor to all of them, because Greek wine was known for having that extra flavor. That's pretty good. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to it. Very sour, not very strong, almost citrusy, sour water, almost a seltzer. I guess it might be worth mentioning that at this time in history, they wouldn't have had carbonation on their beer, so everything would be pretty flat. Already slurring my speech. We have the Sumerian beer, how it was done about 4,000 years ago, known for being kind of chunky, and that's kind of intended. That's why they had actual reed straws, because they didn't have a good way to filter it. But it still has pieces of the dates. This is kind of a weird hybrid between a wine and a beer. The wild yeast I might have cultivated here could be different than what they had in Sumeria back then. So my results might be a lot different than what they had. Let's see if I can get the straw to work. There we go. That has a lot of flavor. That wild yeast again really packs a punch in this. Really nice sour kick, I like it. I think I've heard of it compared to a cider. I could see that. I'd drink this. And then my attempt at a modern beer. It's actually like really mellow. The rosemary has a nice flavor to it. I don't know if I've had a rosemary beer before, but this turns out pretty nice. Turned out a little weak. It's very smooth and easy to drink. Overall, I think that actually turned out surprisingly well. It might take a bit to get you drunk. The alcohol percentages were not the strongest. I think I'd say the Sumerian beer was probably the best. It's got the strongest flavor and got probably the strongest alcohol too, which is always good to have. So the whole processing of it, growing the grains, harvesting, processing, malting, making the ceramics, was about 24 hours of active work. So roughly $195 at today's minimum wage, and broken down per each one because we made 3 different ones, $65 for each of the bottles of beer. So yeah, it is possible to make your own beer out of just grass and dirt. My ceramic skills have obviously not improved too much since the last time I did them in first grade. In retrospect, making some other tools like a funnel might have been a good idea. Now I know. In the end, I was able to make beer, which was a pretty important development in history and was kind of a luxury payment made in a lot of different situations, such as for building the pyramids and just debauchery. All right, let's get drunk. If you haven't, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. In our next video, we're reinventing the wheel. Lastly, cheers to all of our Patreon supporters. Without you, this won't be possible. Consider supporting. Any amount really helps. Please support us. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and check out other content we have covering a wide variety of topics. Also, if you've enjoyed these series, consider supporting us on Patreon. We are largely a fan-funded channel and depend on the support of our viewers in order to keep our series going. Thanks for watching.